Welcome back to the RPG Talk Show. We are going into our main topic, which is sensory considerations.
Yes, this is all the considerations, including a little bit on the sight and audio, even though we did full rundowns of those
Yeah,
specifically. But it's hard to talk about tactile without talking about what you see.
yeah, yeah. So for um uh, for completion's sake, I have a list of some of the all of the honestly the senses that we are generally going to consider. We're not including things like the your body's ability to register how much carbon dioxide is in the lungs, which then makes you feel like you're suffocating.
Right.
Right,
Or if you get too much oxygen in your lungs.
right. So we talked about visual considerations. We talked about auditory considerations. We are now going to be talking about things like touch, taste, smell, possibly even balance, and including things like atmosphere.
Atmosphere, which is the also includes the actual environment that you
Yes.
are playing in.
Hmm.
So,
So
well, shall we start with the tactile?
yeah,
Or okay,
yeah. Let's start off with tactile.
all right.
Tactile is going to be more important to people that have visual limitations.
Well, also for certain other considerations to
Hmm.
give people their mind's eye to understand. So there was first of all, we have ways of treating or working with people who have difficulty seeing. We have tactile,
Hmm.
three-dimensional maps
Yes.
where you can tell the difference between whether or not you're walking across water
Hmm.
or a sand or a cobblestone.
Yeah, we
You can
changed the texture.
literally feel the difference in texture.
Yes.
You can literally count out each 5 foot square because you can feel where each piece is,
Hmm.
and then you can see the changes in elevation.
Yeah. This would also be an important reason why, for example, if you have dice, they have pips or indentations on it so that people can pick it up and feel it as opposed to, well, it's a cube, for example, and it's painted on there and you can't really feel what the numbers are.
Right. Somebody who can read Braille can usually read the numbers on a printed or pipped, not printed, but
Hmm.
they have the numbers in the language you understand.
Yeah.
You can feel the engraving. You can feel the pips for a standard six-sided,
Hmm.
or you can even feel the Braille numbers.
Yes.
Um, so we got the maps and the tactile. But one of the things I don't see people considering
Hmm.
is getting them to experience the environment,
Hmm.
especially people who haven't gotten out a lot,
Yeah.
haven't been out. So there are books like the Dragonology books
Hmm.
that where you have tactile pages where you can feel dragon scales
Nice.
or different textures and stuff. You can see them in
Hmm.
the book too, but you can also feel what a dragon scale feels like.
Yeah.
Um, feel what cold steel feels like as opposed to a iron object.
Right. I'm also thinking, and this is just, bringing your game to another level where you get your, what is it, your water, your cauldron, and you
Hmm.
put some dry ice in there, and you get the foaming out, and you can feel that.
Right.
Yeah.
You can feel the cold.
Hmm.
It does make an atmospheric difference. But
Yeah.
that brings us to props.
Yes.
Now, the difference, of course, between a prop and a handout is that a handout is for the player's
Hmm.
information, while the prop is an in-world object, whether it's a cup or a wand
Right.
or a map
Yeah.
that the player could have, or a letter or anything. This object exists in the game world, and I have a physical representation the players can interact with.
Yeah.
Um,
That is actually very good for the tactile considerations as well.
right. It's a difference when you have an idea of what the weight feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I'm carrying 50 gold pieces. Here's a thing that weighs the same as 50 gold pieces.
Yeah.
How much of that are you carrying?
Mm-hmm. One of the things I've also found is sometimes we've had problems with people remembering that they have, in Dungeons and Dragons, inspiration.
Right. So,
Yeah.
inspiration tokens.
Yeah.
My wife
Literally
made
holding
those.
on to these will remind you that, oh yeah, I have this thing. What is this thing? This is my inspiration.
There's also, I have a large number of six-sided dice that I keep forgetting to take to my Tuesday game.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have hero points,
Yeah.
which gives them a chance to roll an extra die 6.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to remember that they have hero points. But if they have hero points, the extra dice sitting in front of them, they're more likely to take care of it.
Yeah.
Same things have been done for spell slots
Mm-hmm.
and other things that need to be tracked, cards, etc. These give you something to tactically realize I have things,
Yes.
as opposed to just a list.
Mm-hmm.
Other considerations in the tactile stage is in your environmental controls.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to get to environmental controls at the end of this.
Yes.
So our next consideration, just in the order that the list was put in,
Mm-hmm.
was smell.
Well, I have smell and taste, but yeah, smell, they're kind of connected.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
Which, for me, as a person who cannot smell,
Mm-hmm.
but extreme smells, if you're a chef and you're trying to make a meal to impress me,
Mm-hmm.
you have different considerations
Yeah.
than for somebody who has a good sense of smell.
Mm-hmm.
Or even an excellent sense of smell, just completely different considerations.
Yeah.
But smells can be done through campcraft candles, which will give you a scent of campfire, a scent of a swamp,
Mm-hmm.
scent of must, the kind of smells that you wouldn't get a candle for your house,
Yeah.
but you might get it for a haunted house
Yeah.
or for a RPG where
Mm-hmm.
you want to get them immersed. What is one of the biggest triggers of memory?
Smell.
And providing a smell
Mm-hmm.
gives you a trigger for that. I have a notoriously poor memory, but I also have a notoriously poor sense of smell.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidence?
Mm-hmm. And when we say that, smell is the, biggest trigger for memory, we're not just saying that based off of our feelings.
Well, there's scientific proof behind that.
Yeah, the sensory places for picking up scents for
Mhm.
smells is right there at the base of your brain. Yeah,
Yeah, and
it's got the shortest distance.
And taste also works in that. Your smell changes your ability to taste.
Mm-hmm.
It may be the reason that I'm not impressed by ghost peppers.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that extra trigger of the smell to tell me, oh, this is going to be horrible.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do taste considerations in a game?
Mm.
My favorite method is food.
Yeah.
You can also do, I'm going to give you the actual tavern food, or we're all going to bring a potluck for a meal for the game of culturally appropriate foods for the game.
Mm-hmm. Or it may just be like, oh, you're going around the I'm going to be using lizard folk here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're visiting the lizard folk. Well,
That's a lot of Cajun food for me.
I was thinking, this is when we bring the Hawaiian pizzas instead of the normal pizzas.
Right. When I think of lizard folk, I think Cajun.
You think Cajun?
Yeah, because swamp,
Mm-hmm.
seafood.
Yeah. Some jambalaya? Huh?
Oh, heck yeah. That's a lizard folk uh, feast.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to give them the sophistication of being able to cook at all,
Mm-hmm.
you might as well give them the sophistication to cook well.
Yeah. But this is getting into, us, both of our, hyperfixations of like adding culture to,
Right,
yeah.
everything.
Yes.
But so you can do those tastes and smells
Mm-hmm.
to increase the atmosphere. You can do. I heard of somebody doing this, and I hope they did it completely safe.
Yeah.
But they had 3 bottles, and in order to identify the potions,
Mm-hmm.
you had to smell and taste them, and
Ooh.
they actually had you do it in real life, and figure out which one was the healing potion,
Mm-hmm.
what was the potion of flight, and which was the poison.
Yeah. And I want to say that, although not necessarily connected to taste, but it's close enough. If you're doing stuff like that, dietary considerations are an incredibly important thing. Yeah,
Yes.
people, and this may just be some of the things where, if someone is allergic to peanuts, they may have the type of allergy where they can't even be in the room with peanuts.
Yeah. I've seen it for bananas
Yeah.
as well. You can't if you're sitting within this many feet from the person who has a banana allergy. Well, basically, in places I've worked, when there's somebody in the room with a banana allergy, it's banned from the entire room.
Yeah.
Um,
So be considerate of that. Even if it isn't, a part of the story. If someone has an allergy to walnuts and they can't be in the room, maybe don't snack on walnuts.
right.
Yeah.
Um, just because you're in a place where mushrooms and worms are part of the dietary consideration,
Hmm.
um, not everybody's going to want to try that.
Right. There's also cultural considerations as well. Whereas someone may not be, for example, allergic to pork, but maybe their religion says they may be more sensitive to people eating pork.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, not
And
only
I'm just
that,
using that as an example.
right.
Yeah.
Not only that, you have the people that are can't eat pork,
Hmm.
and whether or not they can tolerate watching other people eat pork. But another considerations is what if the reason they can't eat pork is because they don't have the correct enzymes?
Right.
You've got somebody who's been bit by a tick. They're not eating meat,
Hmm.
not because of preference.
Yeah, they may actually be allergic to it then.
Hmm.
Hmm. And I know that we have a few people that we are aware of who've had their gallbladders removed, and
Right.
they can't eat pork anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's not because of any religious dogma or practices that they're following. They literally can't digest it, and it is dangerous for them to eat it. So that I feel, not necessarily taste, but connected to food.
Right.
Yeah.
So tasting things in a lot of aspects, like you're doing scratch and sniffs,
Hmm.
or taste is probably the most dangerous thing to play around with
Yeah.
without knowing your audience.
Yeah.
Um, and whether or not it's actually important to the game,
Hmm.
you can describe it quite flavorfully
Hmm.
without having somebody to actually try to eat gok.
Yeah.
Star Trek reference for those of you who know.
Hmm. So
So, go ahead.
after taste and smell, we have balance. I'm not exactly sure how to do this one,
Well, okay,
with the
balance.
exception of like make sure that the chairs aren't wobbly.
Well, there's also the balance. If I am doing candles for different smells, like
Hmm.
I'm in an Egyptian tomb, I
Hmm.
got one for rust, and I got one for cinnamon, and I got one for um, mold.
Hmm.
That could be overwhelming.
Yes, it can.
Cinnamon alone, the smell of actual cinnamon, not cinnamon toast cinnamon,
Hmm.
will give my wife a migraine and literally chase her out of the room.
Yeah.
She's had stores during Christmas time where they put out all her cinnamon stuff at the front door,
Mm-hmm.
and she can't walk in. It's like a vampire in garlic.
Yeah.
But so you have to have a balance not to overwhelm people.
Mm-hmm.
You want just enough to give you the thoughts and the memories that will go along with it
Mm-hmm.
without making them. You don't really need a candles for a dead body in a swamp.
No, no. I feel the random person who's eating Taco Bell that day will work fine.
Actually, coming from real life, the first one's actually worse. Anyways,
Yes.
I don't want to talk about my negative experiences with smell, the
Yes.
things that I was able to smell at one time.
But I do want to point out though, because we kind of touched upon this in between you and some other people who are more sensitive to it. This is kind of overarching with all the senses. I wanted to bring up hyper and hyposensitivity with the senses.
Right. I'm hyposensitive with my sense of smell.
Mm-hmm.
I am hypersensitive to my sense of hearing, especially high pitches.
Yeah.
I have actually hearing loss in the high pitch area, but certain notes still physically cause me pain.
Right. And this isn't just sometimes it isn't just a simple, oh, someone has a higher pitch. This is one of the things I've come across while studying autism, where some people who are on the autistic spectrum literally are either hypo or hyper sensitive to certain senses.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, one person who may needs to have their food extremely bland because they're hyposensitive on taste.
Right. Or another person who can't tolerate soft touch
Right.
versus constricting touch.
Mm-hmm. So, I want to bring this up to point out that just because it is one person's experience with senses doesn't mean that it's everyone's experience with senses, and we have to be considered that some people may literally experience the world in a different way than us.
Right. And that includes lighting,
Yes.
temperature of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to have my Arctic expedition story and lower the temperature in the room so that everybody's just slightly uncomfortable?
Right.
And will that work for the? I know a RN, registered nurse,
Mm-hmm.
who came from Africa, and not South Africa, but Southern Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And she was, or I should say more, the middle line, equatorial.
Yeah.
So she was more equatorial African, and we would have a 70-degree day.
Mm-hmm.
She's got blankets on because she's cold. Can you imagine her being in the same room with everybody else, and we are having the temperature down to 55?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just slightly uncomfortable, but she is in literal misery.
Mm-hmm. I've and this is something where I have to deal with certain family members of mine where, well, I am from the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
I was born near the equator. I know that certain people in my family just cannot handle the cold at all. Me, I'm more comfortable with it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that just because I can handle it means they can.
I always had a saying: I preferred excessive cold to excessive heat because
You can always put more on.
I can always bundle, and I have all kinds of techniques to conserve and produce heat, but I can only get so naked.
Yeah, at some point you're going to get arrested.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or shot at for Sasquatch sighting.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. We're talking about atmosphere.
Yeah, atmosphere, which can be a combination of smells, sounds, I want um, Cajun smells, and I don't want to do smells for troglodytes. But for the
Hmm.
lizard folks, I might have some Cajun smells in there, the sound of lapping water.
Yeah.
And all of these things need to be complementary to the story,
Yes.
but not overwhelming of the story.
Hmm.
I have background music,
Yeah.
like we said in the auditory, avoid um, vocals that will
That
capture people's attention.
and not just capture people's attention, but a lot of times, like you can have people using the voice, but it isn't registered as language. And I specifically say registers as language because that activates a specific portion of the brain.
Right.
Yeah.
Throat singing
Hmm.
can be dismissed as not language, even when there are words that you just don't recognize.
Right. Certain types of Latin, people aren't going to register it as language anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's dead, but yeah.
Or Mongolian.
Right.
I've heard some Mongolian throat singing, and a lot of the words don't sound like words
Yeah.
to a person who doesn't speak the language.
Hmm. I'm not sure how yodeling would fit into that though.
Well, yodeling is a means of communication, and
Yes.
different yodels have different meanings.
Hmm.
Um, the stereotypical little lady hoo
Hmm.
is just one form of communication,
Yeah.
and it's done with a horn to get the sound to go across long distances.
Hmm.
But different sounds will give different pieces of information.
Yeah.
Uh, and yodeling is not a background noise.
No. No.
It is not something you can just have in the background. It will disrupt and pull focus.
It does.
Having it occasionally or once,
To set, yeah, it's a few weeks back I mentioned establishing shots.
yeah,
I think having certain things be established, but then fade out and no longer be there will help.
right.
So one of the things I found when it comes to, for example, background music for for ambiance, is one you can have certain things at the very beginning that fade out, and then you actually lower the volume so that you can actually hear what people are saying, but it's kind of still there. So you wait it at the beginning, you wait it at the end, you wait it during intermissions, but while people are actually playing, it's not really there.
I played Spelljammer.
Hmm.
And one of the neat things about Spelljammer was there was an album, which I actually bought.
Yeah.
Then I end up, here's the irony, I buy the album, but I don't use the album in my games because it's easier to play it off
Yeah.
YouTube.
Hmm.
Um, but the problem I found out with it, why this was thematic music for each chapter.
Hmm.
The only time that it was appropriate to play it, which means if you're in your home and you're doing the just chatting section of your game,
Yeah.
you might play it before you play. During the game,
No.
it was disruptive.
Yeah.
It was made communications harder.
Hmm. And this is the difference between you can have a musician, but a musician who's knows how to make music and a musician who knows how to make atmospheric music. Two different skill sets.
Right. Also, sound effects.
Yeah.
Um, why sound effects are cool. Like Hawk, you were there when Hawk did the battlefield sounds
Hmm.
during the opening of Twilight 2000.
Yes.
While at the very opening, when it's supposed to be chaos, it worked. But after the opening,
Hmm.
he stopped using sound effects
Yeah.
because we did our establishing
Shot.
shot,
Yep. Hmm.
and then we got on to the rest of the story.
Hmm.
You're aware of cultural meanings and things like that from an establishing shot, and you don't have to hit it with a hammer every time to remind people of it.
Yeah.
That color red means this in our culture.
Hmm.
Say Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
once it's pointed out, you don't have to say constantly, notice the red dress?
Yeah.
Um, it's already there and encoded for you.
Just make sure that you don't muddy it with other things. So, for example, if I say, red dresses are important, the color red is important, right? And then I bombard you with red that isn't important, then
Right.
you're desensitized to it, and people aren't going to remember like, oh, yeah, well, your hat's red. I needed to pay attention to that one, as opposed to the umpteen other red things that you paraded past me.
I have actually seen a show where they told you red was important.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't say it, but they all but said it.
Yeah,
That, look for red.
yeah,
And then it became an Easter egg hunt to find the pieces that had red. It wasn't like, oh, and now we're in the red room.
yeah.
Um,
There's a movie like that. It's one of
we
the
might be thinking of the same one.
Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And red wasn't necessarily the color, but it was something you had to look for these Easter eggs
Mm-hmm.
to get the clues and things like, oh, you ever notice that that person is never actually in the shot with that other person ever?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's I will make fun of M. Night Shyamalan for a lot of reasons, but some of his movies are actually well done.
Yes.
Sixth Sense was, I think, when it came out, really well done.
Yeah. I think part of people's problems is that they became so requirement of the twist,
Mm-hmm.
the big twist reveal, that it became the story as opposed to the story happens to have a twist.
Yeah, there's good twists and there's bad twists, and sometimes, and this is one of the issues I've seen where in certain subcultures where they're so enamored with being smart and being witty that they've forgotten that no, you actually need to have a message.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The twist is that the aliens are allergic to water.
Okay. Well, that's anticlimactic.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Um,
This is anticlimactic. That's bad storytelling.
the twist that the aliens are allergic to our pathogens actually worked, and only once.
Yeah.
It couldn't be repeated
Mm-hmm.
once War of the Worlds came out. It couldn't be repeated for every alien because after the first time it became a cop out.
Yeah. And here's one of the issues that I have with the what is it? It was science.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So these aliens, okay, these aliens are traveling the cosmos because they're interstellar. Okay. They water is abundant enough in the universe that they would know that they're allergic to it.
Yes.
In fact, even in the movie, they show that they are avoiding water.
Mm-hmm.
And then they invade a planet that is 60% water?
70.
70% water?
Yeah.
What were they going to do when it rains?
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
that's just bad storytelling.
it kind of was. I mean, so the aliens come to Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and water is deathly to them. The most prolific um, material in the universe is hydrogen.
Yes,
And when you put in oxygen,
it's very easy to make water.
yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
But so if I'm an alien race and I am going to um, have a problem with water,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't I have dry suits?
Yeah.
Wouldn't
Or
I have came prepared for this problem?
yeah.
I have the sophistication to travel at light speed, but I can't put on a raincoat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, that's writing issues. but we are looking at the consistency,
Hmm.
um, using environmental cues to gain better immersion,
Yeah.
and finding that balance between too much
Hmm.
and too little. I actually don't have to use a German accent.
No.
If I tell you this German man with a thick accent talks to you, I don't actually have to do the thick German
Hmm.
accent. You can fill in the bass and they understand it.
Yeah. And this is I'm going to mix in two things. One that I learned in arts class, which is when I'm doing, for example, textures,
Hmm.
I don't have to draw, for example, every single texture. I have to do it in certain spots, and then I can infer the rest.
What was the common thing I saw with scales?
Hmm.
Just a few scales.
Yeah, infer the rest.
Yeah.
You don't have to draw them. And one of the things that I found as someone who relies quite a bit at times on theater of the mind, if I can evoke a reaction out of someone during the establishing shot, I don't need to hammer that home anymore. More.
Right.
If I want them to be like, oh, this feels gross, all I have to do is get it once. I've got them there, and I move on.
Right. I don't have to hammer it. I will put in details on one of my Cthulhuoid monsters, like, um, you do this thing. It doesn't matter what you did.
Hmm.
All several eyes spread out throughout all the monster from the various different heads and eyes that just had no other place to be.
Hmm.
All look at you at once.
Yeah, and I will
And
say
then I
that.
don't have to mention those eyes again. Everybody knows they're there.
Yeah, and this is a matter of being more experienced, learning when to reintroduce to remind people. For example, you said like if I'm doing Call of Cthulhu stuff as well.
Hmm.
Okay, you may say eyes come out of everywhere. I would say well things that you're not expecting to blink at you now do.
Right.
Like that book you're holding. Well, yeah, it winked at you. What?
Or that book you're holding is warm.
Uncomfortably warm.
Yeah. Not like hot, but
Warm.
just like uh, the warm feeling of skin under the sun.
Right. And I found that there are certain. This is best done with honesty, with disgust, with the sense of disgust. There are certain descriptors I can make that ubiquitously people have a reaction to.
Yeah.
So, for example, you say, we're talking about books here. Okay, you pick up the book, and it feels like a wet carpet, and it's
Right.
warm. It's
And
like
then it moves.
something in it, wriggles onto your palm. Ugh.
And then people are going to have a real hard problem looking at that book again, let alone opening it and trying to read it.
Right. But you were evocative.
And again, with all these sensory things,
Hmm.
they don't have to be overwhelming, and
Hmm.
they don't have to be hammered home. Now, some things have to have complete consistency, like
Yes.
how much light you have.
Hmm.
Um,
You got to be able to see who you're talking to.
right. Flickering lights at a moment of building tension, fine, but not the rest of the show.
Also, be considerate of if someone has epilepsy.
Yes. Um, Sign language
Hmm.
would be ubiquitous. Every moment would be in sign language
Yeah.
if you have somebody who needs it.
Hmm.
Um, all the considerations that you do for sound um, are going to have to be consistent.
Yeah.
Yes, there are things to play with,
Hmm.
but really, how long does everybody want to sit in a room that is cool to cold to give them that Arctic sense.
Yeah.
Um, again, do the establishing shot
Mm-hmm.
or have them. I don't know how to do this fast enough,
Mm-hmm.
but you have them step out of the nice warm building into that gust of sharp wind. Is
Mm-hmm.
it enough to describe the icy cuts? Um, or do I really want to drop the temperature in the room so fast that,
Just store everything in the walk-in freezer.
yeah.
um.
Okay, everybody, walk through the freezer, into the freezer. I'm
Uh-huh.
shutting the door behind you. Tell me when you've had enough.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to say I've had enough before I step into the freezer. I've done fast food enough.
Yeah.
But one other consideration that I wanted to bring up is um, uh, and this is especially for people who have special needs.
Hmm.
Um, uh, be considerate of what their needs may be, and sometimes it isn't things that we can necessarily anticipate. So have open communication with them,
Right.
right? Um, uh, Sometimes like we've talked about in the various senses, but if you, for example, have someone who is in a wheelchair, can they even come to the table?
Right.
Yeah, can they? Is the table accommodating for them?
And do they have that's again, we come back to the pre-prep
Hmm.
things that we should address in the session 0.5
Yeah,
is that do you have any accommodations that I need to be aware of?
right.
And then if you're planning on doing things with light, sounds, and smells,
Hmm.
ask them, are you hypersensitive? Or so here's an example.
Hmm.
We're doing the swamp lizard folks.
Hmm.
I have Cajun food smells.
Hmm.
I have candle flickering lights
Hmm.
to represent the torchlight, or I have electronic torch lights.
Yeah.
I have something to give me a little bit of that swamp smell.
Hmm.
I have a audio tape playing the background of the crickets and the cicadas,
Cicadas.
cicadas,
Hmm.
and all of these different things to try to build up this information. Am I actually just overwhelming my player?
Yeah, that is entirely possible. Especially if you're like me and you grew up in a swampy area,
Hmm.
you can put as much Spanish moss around the table as you want. It isn't going to feel like a swamp unless you are sitting there sweating.
Right. Um, you know, and do I really want to turn up the temperature like that?
And not just the temperature, heat and humidity.
Right. And the smell
Hmm.
and the sounds.
And everything's just moist, and you're not thinking about rolling the dice because sweat is dropping down down your back. Yeah, that's overwhelming.
Yeah. Do you really need that much immersion? I mean, what are we
No,
doing? A hologram here?
yeah,
We're not on the holodeck. So try while you can use all these senses to enhance things.
yeah,
A little goes a long way. It's a
mm,
pinch of salt, not a salt lick.
right. So if you're doing the swamp, no, don't don't have people go into a hot box and just don't run the game in a sauna
Right,
with the occasional intermissions of a cicada screaming for its life.
right. Or the sound of a monkey being eaten by an alligator. We don't need that.
No, you don't. You don't.
I
That's.
can tell you about it, and that should be enough.
Mhm.
And most times, I find that my evocative language usually works better than I plan on it.
Yeah.
I don't. It's like, wow, I can really trigger these people in a good way.
Yes. Also, we're talking about triggering. yeah, sometimes being evocative will get people close to being triggered. Be aware of that.
Right.
And sometimes they may not be aware that this would be triggering for them.
True. And sometimes being triggered is the point.
Yeah.
If it's therapeutical, that
Hmm.
definitely might be the point.
Yes.
If you are trying to, the purpose of horror movies is to be triggered.
Yeah.
Uh, the purpose of watching a high action movie with real stakes and tension
Hmm.
is to feel that buildup of attention in yourself.
Yeah. That build of tension and and feeling the stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's that line.
Yeah. There is a line where you go too far.
There's um I've still been told that some of the most brutal movies
Hmm.
are the ones where you're not getting the wire foo and the special effects. It's the ones that look like that was a real fight.
Yeah.
That you felt the bones crunching.
Hmm.
You everything has that extra weight and the realism of the impact, the
Hmm.
realism of the response to the impact.
Yeah.
In movies, a guy can get hit in the head 3 or 4 times and just keep fighting.
Yeah.
In a realistic movie, the first hit may have gotten them so disoriented uh, that they have to take that break, try to shake it off,
Hmm.
and then the bad guy's not letting them.
Yeah. There,
So,
there are certain narrative considerations where, depending on what you're trying to do with the story and how you're trying to affect the audience, sometimes you want that level of disbelief.
right.
You don't want to be like, for example, you've got your Arnold Schwarzenegger high octane action movies,
Hmm.
right? And at the end, he slips on a bar of soap, lands on his neck wrong, and is dead.
Which is realistic.
It's
That
entirely realistic.
just ruins their character.
Yeah.
Uh, my third child, no, second child, Chuck hates Superman
Hmm.
because of the death of Superman.
Yeah. Yeah. That was they 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 released that genie from that bottle, and it's never going back in.
Yeah.
Death of Superman was impactful, but it I think it did a lot of damage to the industry.
And in the vein of less is more, when we're
Mhm.
talking about dealing with all these sensories,
Yeah.
one of the things I learned in theater, actually, one of the first things I learned in theater,
Hmm.
is that through common practice, you cut somebody's throat
Hmm.
on stage and you get that realistic spurt
Hmm.
that would give you that blood pattern. That's almost unbelievable
Yeah.
to the common viewer. But if you just show a slow line,
Hmm.
and that has so much more impact
Yeah.
than the
Okay, so this is getting into, and we've got. I'm gonna have to end it with this
yeah.
before we go into our next section. There's a difference between realism and narrative language.
Yes.
Yes. Realism, reality is sometimes stranger than fiction, but if you want to communicate certain things, sometimes have to be unrealistic.
Well, one of the examples I got in the argument was doing fire
Yeah.
on stage. You don't need and you don't want
Hmm.
real fire on stage.
No, you don't.
There are small examples like a lit um, torch or a candle,
Hmm.
but if you're going to have like the building on fire, you're better off doing it with the lights and sounds than having anything. And the people are going to accept that
Yeah.
far more than blowing smoke into the theater.
Hmm. Yeah. You don't need a you don't need a smoke machine. Some orange curtains, some lights below, and a fan. Good enough.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I've done it with cellophane.
that too.
But anyways, we've gotten into this pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Please tell us if you want more in depth on things, if you want us to do suggestions for a specific,
If you want a deep dive on anything,
tell us.
yeah. So,
Info at rpgresearch.com.
hmm
And please put the word talk show in the subject line so we know exactly who you want to talk to.
right. After this, we have our unboxing,
Correct.
which is going to be an unboxing and a review. And I already have some thoughts, but we'll get into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have a lot of thoughts about this one
Yes.
because there are changes. Changes.
Yes. We will see that. So, that's going to be after the jump. After these messages, we'll be right back.